This week's guest is Jack Milner. Jack works as a director, comedy writer, business facilitator, and speaker. He has over 20 years' experience helping organizations and individuals articulate and memorably communicate their ideas. Jack says that skills learned from the world of stand-up comedy and improvisation mean fresh, natural, and compelling communication, and can help audiences understand complex stories. As director for the West End, film and radio, Jack knows how to take often dry, technical information and render it clear and memorable, no matter who the audience. He's worked with top comedians, theatre and soap stars, as well as a lot of stressed-out executives. His clients include some fairly hefty businesses, such as Google, Microsoft, Virgin Media, the BBC, National Theatre, and the Armagh Look and See Group. Hello, Jack.
Hello, Maria.
That's quite an intro, isn't it?
Yeah. Yes, it is.
Fantastic. So how did you get started?
Okay, it was sort of a little journey. So if I give you that journey as briefly as possible. So I started out working as a comedy performer and writer, and then I ran a little comedy touring company, and that in turn led me to running some comedy improvisation, comedy sketch type workshops. I did that for a while, and then a venue said, we'd like you to run some stand-up workshops. And I said, actually, I don't think you can teach stand-up. You know, you're either funny or you're not, sort of thing. And then the venue said, well, actually, we've already got some people booked, and we'll pay, and we pay you more than normal. And I said, well, actually, I think you can teach stand-up. And I realized that I could really by doing three things. One was to help people take away the stuff that gets in the way. Second thing was to make sure it was fun. Yeah. And the third thing was to give them some tools to help build confidence. And very quickly, there weren't many other people doing it at the time. So this is about 25 years ago. So very quickly, I was working with people like the National Theatre and Channel 4, etc. And that in turn led to businesses occasionally picking up a leaflet and saying, that stand-up thing you do, could you do something similar for instance, our analysts doing their 7:30 presentations in the city, because we'd like to make them a bit more engaging. So that was over 20 years ago. And, you know, and the longer I've done it now, the more I've realized actually the skills used in improvisation and stand-up are incredibly relevant to business.
Fantastic. And we'll come back to that a bit later on, because I sort of want to delve into some of the other things that you've done. So I know that you also write, and you got into trouble in Russia, didn't you, with regards to your writing? Yes,
a few times actually. So this was quite some time ago, and I got involved with a serious script. So I had no gags at all, but it was an amazing true story. And as part of it, I had to go out to Russia. This was just after the Gorbachev and just beginning of Yeltsin time. So it was all very chaotic. And I went out to Russia, and this part of the story is set in the frozen north in somewhere called Severodvinsk, which used to be a port called Molotovsk, which was at the time their secret submarine port. And I was staying with a Russian family, one of whom worked at this submarine place. And he said, Jack, would you like to come and see, to go to Severodvinsk? And you have to pretend to be a Russian. I said, yeah, that'd be fantastic. So I went in. It was all seemed very straightforward. And then he said, would you like to see the port? I said, well, am I allowed? And he said, no, you're not allowed. Would you like to see? And I said, yeah, okay. So I went along and went through the gate. And as I was going along, he brought his mate along. They were both banging their wrists together as like manacles, going, ching ching Jack, ching ching, Sibiri. So they all thought it was hilarious. But I was getting more and more scared. I thought, what am I doing? What am I doing? And then when I was there, I thought, so I stood on the side, and there were these enormous, they're the biggest submarines in the world, biggest nuclear submarines in the world. So there I was. And I thought, well, I'm here. I've got my camera. The best thing is to be as touristy as possible. So don't be secretive. So I started going around taking snaps of these, and I've got them. And it was a secret city, so it didn't actually exist on the maps, you know, so you couldn't see it. I went around, took some photographs, and then we all skedaddled out. Very peculiar experience. But great fun. And but I did get punched. I did get arrested later on a train. But managed to escape.
Oh my goodness. I'm not sure about your Russian accent either, I'm afraid.
My God, Siberia. So any Russian listeners, apologies, okay?
Fantastic. So you're good at getting into trouble when you're abroad, aren't you? So you did something in Calcutta, didn't you, when you were a comedian? What happened there?
Oh, well, right. This was before we had kids. So I was with my wife. We were on holiday, and I booked us into this little hotel with some fabulous grounds, just overlooking the ocean near Calicut in Kerala. And we arrived, and they were so warm and so friendly. And I thought, this is fantastic. This is what a welcome, people throwing flowers and stuff like that. I thought, this is well, anyway, we'll go with the flow. And then we were having dinner, and the manager came up, and he said, Mr. Milner. And again, apologies for my Indian accent. I won't do my Indian accent. It's so bad. So he said, Mr. Milner, I've just got a little favour to ask you. And I said, oh yeah. He said, I've seen your website. And I said, oh, right. And we're doing a little festival tomorrow. It's the Calicut Rock and Roll Festival. Yeah. And we wondered if you do some comedy. And I said, well, I'm on holiday. So no, sorry. I won't. We're on holiday. I'm supposed to be having a relaxing time. And that already makes me feel quite stressed. The Indian Rock and Roll Festival. And he said, yeah. And then he went out and came back, and he got this leaflet. And there it was, Indian Rock and Roll Festival. And at the top of it, headlining, Jack Milner, comedian from England.
Oh my goodness.
With a couple of quotes. And he said, please, Mr. Milner, we thought you'd want to do it. It's the top rock and roll festival in Calicut.
Did you do it?
I just went, I don't, but yeah. Well, I initially said no, and we had a chat with my wife. She said, well, you've got to. You can't let this guy down. So the next day, I worked together an act, because he said, just a little thing, we are, a lot of those people attending, their English won't be very good. So if you can work around that. And so I did, and I did some, I did a mix of, I was told, animal impersonations go down well. So I got a couple of very silly songs which happened to involve chickens. So I cut out the rude bits, because I wasn't sure that would go down so well. And did it, and took the mickey out of the techie. And it seems to be, techies the world over are very similar. I did discover that. And yeah, much to my surprise, it went all right. Yeah. So we got some laughs, and but yeah, that was very bizarre.
And actually, that leads me on to quite an interesting question, because obviously, people want to use humour in their speeches, but that must be very hard to do when you've got an international audience. I suppose when you've got one nationality, you can find out, but if you've got a diverse nationality with different, points of reference, how do you use humour in that case?
Well, one is, I suppose what I did in that particular occasion was I did actually ask him some questions about what sort of thing do they like? Yeah, what's likely to work, bearing in mind the difficulties we've got. And so he said, well, we love animal impressionists. Okay, I thought, well, I'm not an animal impressionist, but it gives me a start.
Yeah.
So do a bit of research. The second thing is, and obviously you're talking about different types of humour, there are some things that are universal. So, relationships, husband and wife, partners, that sort of stuff, it seems to be pretty much the same the world over. Men are pretty hopeless. That seems to be a given. When it comes to women, yeah, men are hopeless in lots of and very similar ways across cultures, and women put up with a lot. That seems to be, and are usually see themselves as brighter, and men actually do as well. So that seems to go down well. So those are certain givens, but also you've got to. Somebody said to me, when you are, even when you're very fluent in a language, this was someone who was, and I'm Maria, I think you're bilingual at least, very least, aren't you?
Italian, yes.
Italian, yeah. But she said, well, when it's, even when you're very good at another language, it can be, unless you are truly, truly bilingual, in other words, you think in the different languages, then it's the humor and the irony that you find very difficult. So for instance, and that actually goes across cultures. So it's not that, for instance, the Americans don't get irony. They do. You only have to look at some of their fabulous comedy shows. It's just that they don't get our irony because they're not part of our British culture. Yeah. So they don't get the fact that the Brits, when they do banter, can be quite rude. Yeah. Or what appears to be rude, but it's not in Britain. It's seen as, somebody once said to me, if an Englishman greets you politely, and you've known them a while, this is when you've known them a while, and they just greet you very politely, then they know they don't like you, right? But if they greet you with a huge insult, then you're away. So so I should finish this call with a good insult, Maria. So
thank you. You preempted my last question. There you go. So that's really interesting. So that's great that you can apply that to speaking. What else have you learned from the comedy world that you can apply to speaking?
Well, one is that we love it when people, when speakers just chat to us as human beings. Yeah, and that's, I think, one of the biggest mistakes I see from less experienced speakers is they go up and it's this rather phony person that you think, where are you? There's somewhere in there's you, yeah, and there's this, and actually what we want is you to converse and be present with us. So something that the comedians are very good at is breaking that so-called fourth wall between them and the audience. And I know one of the best speakers around, who we both know very well, Mark Stevenson. Yeah, Mark has a background in stand-up, some time ago, but he uses a lot of that in making those connections with the audience. So if, for instance, having seen him in action, say the first 5 minutes aren't going quite as well as he'd expected, he's got that wherewithal to say, okay, I need to create a connection with the audience now. And it might be just provoking them, so pushing them, or it might be some self-deprecating humor, or it might be picking on an individual and creating a little connection that way. And that's those sort of skills, I think, in particular, and just the confidence. I think I always recommend when people say, "Oh, how do I improve as a speaker?" I say, "Well, go on a stand-up course. Put yourself on a stand-up course if you really want to learn it." And they go, "Oh, that's a bit scary." And well, exactly. When you can do that, then you can handle everything, and the confidence you will get from it is enormous. Yeah. So you don't have to be the funniest person in the world. Don't worry about that. Just do it. You'll develop some gags as you go along, and then give it a go.
Very sound advice. And I'm glad you mentioned Mark, because he's a great example, because his content, he's a futurist, if anybody doesn't know. And he will be one of our future guests, actually, on a podcast. So thank you for mentioning it. But his content, of course, is quite technical and can be very hard going without that humour. And with that humour, he makes it wonderful and memorable. So great example. So I want to ask you now, do you approach working with comedians and actors and soap stars differently to how you would approach working with a senior executive, for example?
No, I don't. There's a lot of similarities. They are often both under huge pressure. So that's first, is an understanding of the pressures. So for instance, if you're a soap star in a play, then the chances are you're in the play partly to help sell tickets. And you're not an idiot. You know that. And also, everyone has that imposter syndrome a bit. Yeah. Yeah. Likewise, we all do. And you have that imposter syndrome. And then if you're a soap star, you've made your living blagging it, essentially, because acting in soaps involves a lot of blagging. where you are having to learn lines incredibly quickly, and you've got a certain technique that just means that you, in your mind, actually there's a real skill to it, but you get away with it. Then they've got the job in the first place, actually, because they're really good actors. That's why soap pays them a lot of money. And then they go back into, say, theatre, and suddenly they're doing something they're unfamiliar with, and they're in their head, they're going, I'm famous because I flag every day, and now I've got to go up there. And so the exec is thinking, is often feeling the same thing. Here I am, it's imposter syndrome, and often part of their skill, if you like, the thing that's driven them to where they've got to, is a fairly decent-sized ego. And so there's that needs to be looked after as well. And I found that when I worked with, or when I worked with soap stars, that you've got to really respect and understand that ego needs a little bit of puffing occasionally. Yeah, and you've got to, and helping them out, but also you've got to be really honest with them as well, and be prepared to push them. And I find that they, both executives and when I'm working with soap stars, they both appreciate that fact that you want the best for them. The only reason why you're pushing them and saying, come on, you can do this, is because you want them to be, to reflect actually the often very brilliant person that they are.
Very good, very good. So I think one of the big things for people when they speak is actually nerves and managing nerves. Have you got any tips for that?
Yeah, well, actually, one of my favourite tips, because it's just such a good one, comes from the brilliant Jamil Qureshi. Little plug there from Jamil.
Thank you.
Yeah, from his one of his the footballer book. Yeah. Yes,
people might not know. We're now going to reveal that Jamil Qureshi is the secret psychologist.
Yeah, well, he does actually put it on his email, so I think it's out there.
Not much of a secret, but carry on.
Yeah. The sorry world, if you were going, oh no, I thought it was the bloke down the road. Anyway, it's Jamil. And he says, one of his top tips, with footballers in their mindset was don't compare. So you were in a team with Messi, for instance, or you say in the Welsh team is a classic, where they've got one amazing world-class player, Gareth Bale, and the rest of them are good or average.
They're going to love you. They're going to love you.
I don't support Wales, so I can say, but it's true. And he said, don't compare. Don't compare yourself. Don't compare yourself to the other players in the team. Compare yourself to how you were 6 months ago. Are you improving compared to yourself 6 months ago? It's the same as a speaker. Yeah, you go on. Say, for instance, you're if you like, in a speaking event, the sandwich, the filler between the star act at the beginning and the star act at the end. Yeah, and you're less experienced than they are, you're less famous than they are, and you've got a lower fee than they have. Yeah, and you're speaking for longer as well. So you really are the filler. But you do not compare yourself to, for instance, a Jamil. Yeah, Jamil's been doing it a while. Apart from being very gifted and all the rest of it, he's been doing it a while. He does, you'll know better than me, a lot of gigs.
Yes. Every
year. Yeah. I mean, he can be in 3 or 4 countries over 3 days. Yeah. Sometimes more. I mean, it's outrageous, the amount of stuff. And that helps you that's part of it. So what is the point of comparing yourself to that? So number 1, don't compare. Number 2 is accept your nerves. Yeah. So one of the things when you go on stage as a comedian, you're never going to look as nervous as you feel. Number 1, but also accept what's happening to you. So when you get that feel like, oh my God, I'm up here and I'm not feeling my best. No, I bet they all think I'm an idiot. Just breathe and go, okay, I'm nervous. Because the moment you start going, I'm posturing here, and I'm just realizing this is a podcast. No one can see me posturing. So, but once you start saying, okay, I'm going to stand and look amazingly confident. Oh, that makes me look a bit like a fascist. I better not do that. And then you start going, okay, I'll try and look natural. and you're looking rather peculiar, and all the time you're inside your head and you're not connecting to the audience out there. So accept. And the third thing, and works brilliantly for me, is to visualize the audience, whatever they are, as a group of people who you've spoken to in the past who loved you. So that's something for instance, so what I do is I used to go and do speaking events at Bucks Uni. So I used to go and talk to the students, and I'd have a great time. Yeah. In all honesty, I didn't prepare as much as I should. Yeah. Because it wasn't as well paid as one would hope. But I loved it. Actually loved it. Third year students going in, having a chat with them, and it was great fun. We'd have loads of laughs. And so if I see a sea of suits out there, and those little voices in my head go, "Oh, yeah, you're a bit of imposter. Who are you to talk to these people about that?" And in my head, I go, okay, you're a group of students at Bucks Uni. Yeah. I am who I am. I can't pull down a glitter ball of myself. I can't, turn myself into, say, Jamil, and neither should I. Yeah, I should be true to myself, who I am, and do my thing, do it as well as I can. Do not apologize for who I am. And, they are that group of students at Bucks Uni. They don't know that. And then we have a really good time.
That's really good advice yet again. And actually, sort of to delve a little bit further into who you are, your wife bought you a book called Dull Men of Great Britain. Why? Why?
I think there's a little message there, isn't there? There's a little hint. Because I'm a cricket nut. Yeah. Now that's not particularly dull, because cricket people who love cricket listen to this. I also collect wisdom almanacs.
I have no idea what that is.
Right. Okay. I don't have one here, but they're called the Cricketing Bible. So they're these little funny square yellow books of about 1,000 pages, and they are just full of cricket scorecards. They've got now the modern ones actually have got lots of articles and things like that in them, right? But they go back to 1863. And they're just full of reports on cricket matches and stuff like that. Anyway, I've got about 120 from 1887, I think is my oldest. And they are collectors' things. You collect them. And unlike a lot of collectors, I read them. I have two. This is why she bought Dull Men of Great Britain for me, because I have two by my bed.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
That makes sense. That makes sense. So finally, we're coming to a close. So I think this is a really apt question at this point. Can you give us a couple of tips for a really good finish?
All right. Okay. Good finish. Okay. So number one, a good finish is don't finish with Q&A. Yeah. Yeah. Because you finish with Q&A, then the last question might be, where's the loo?
I doubt it, but yes, I know what you mean. It changes. Yeah. It changes.
Yeah. Or it might be that really crap question. You go, oh, thank you very much for that. I'm now running out of time. We're finishing on a bit of a look. So then you stay in control of it. Second thing is in stand-up, used to say, have either your best line or your second best line for the end. Most speakers actually, they'll work really hard at the beginning, because they want to grab their audience, but they don't go, okay, I need to finish on a biggie, and spend a lot of time. If you haven't got one, spend a lot of time on that third. The third thing is have a finish on a laugh, finish on a gag if you
finish on a gag. Fantastic.
Yeah, finish on a laugh. Yeah.
Okay, I haven't got a gag. I'm just going to say thank you very much, Jack, for being my guest today.
Yeah, and you're looking fantastic, Maria.
Thank you.
I can see Maria, by the way, people, just in case you don't know. Okay.
Thank you, Jack.
Thank you. Bye-bye.